we talk about separation. When we speak of separation, it feels like when we talk about separation, we should be able to say what we separate from what. What do we separate from what? Like, say, for instance, when you add oil to water, what happens? The oil floats on water, right? Because it has a lesser density than water. So when the two of them are put into the same container, you can see that there is a separation. So then you'll say the oil is separate from the water. If I had a bunch of pens here and I ask you to separate them into, say, two groups, two sets, then you'll ask me, on what basis, Swaminathan? Do you want me to separate by color? Do you want me to separate by what their intended use is, whether it's a marker pen or a ballpoint pen or a drawing pen or whatever, right? So you'll ask me some questions to determine what is the criteria for that separation. If I asked all of you to separate yourselves, now there are some obvious characteristics that we can use to separate. What are some of them? Height, yeah? Gender, you can separate by gender. You can separate by age, yeah. You can separate by complexion, by hair style, right? With hair and without hair. So we are already separate like that, aren't we? You're on that side and I'm on this side. Personality? Absolutely, yeah. You can separate by personalities. Or if you're blind like me, right? Or whether you can actually see. So these are characteristics that we can use to separate. So it's obvious when we talk about separation, you need to find a criteria with which you can separate something. But when we talk about, if you remember the example that I showed you the other day in the Sinhala sermon, where we took some water into two glasses. Were you all there? Most of you were, okay? In one glass we had some ice, in the other glass we just had some water. So it looked separate. The two of them, the contents of the two glasses looked separate right at the start. What we did then was we poured some of the water into the glass that had the ice, and after a while, it was water in both glasses. Now when I ask you the question, can you please now separate the water that was ice previously in that glass and take it out and put it into the other glass? Now you're not able to do that anymore. Because there are no characteristics with which you can any longer do the separation. Meaning, they're all the same. This separation that you were able to see when you saw the ice and water was simply a difference in the amount of energy within that system. By system, I mean the glass. There was a different quantity of energy in one versus the other. Matter-wise, they were both the same. So I could have measured an exactly equal amount of water into two glasses, and one of them put in the freezer, the other just left out. So the same amount of water, I freeze one, now you have ice in one and just plain water in the other. So matter-wise, they're the same. Difference is the quantity of energy. So if you take out energy from both of these, you have the same amount of substance. If you put back the same amount of energy, you again have the same substance, the same quantity of substance, just looks different. It appears different. It seems different. Apparently it's different. But it's not different. It's not separate. See, the thing is this. If things in this world cannot be separated, if we start on that basis, then the very question of separate what from what is a meaningless question. Yeah. Remember, what we're talking about here is a sense of separation. This feeling of separation is only a sense of separation, and that separation didn't really happen. Again, if you go back to the example of the water and the ice, we took exactly the same amount of water, put it into 2 containers, and we added energy. We added energy. Ice is water with a lesser amount of energy. Water is ice, only with more energy in the system. So if you take the energy out, then they're identical. Right? This is why this can always be converted to this, and this can always be converted to this. Are you with me so far? So therefore, when we melted this ice, and this was water, and if you mix the 2 of them into the same container, now you are no longer able to separate this water from this and this water from this, because they are all the same. All of these molecules are H2O, and all of these molecules are also H2O. It's the same stuff. But it looks and feels separate at this stage. That's simply a difference in the amount of energy in the system. It is only and merely a structural difference. Yeah, it's only a structural difference. So there is a difference in this world that is apparent, and this is the structural difference. The only difference that exists among materials, among substance, is the structural difference. That is why any substance can eventually be converted to another substance. Because when you keep breaking it down, all materials are ultimately the same elements. And once you take it to the elemental level, they can be reconstructed to form other things. That's how the process of recycling works. So you're able to recycle things because they were not separated in the first place. A plastic bottle today was one of these yesterday. And this today is a bag tomorrow, or a pot tomorrow, or something else tomorrow. That's because there's only a structural difference. And this structural difference is a result of the amount of energy that has been fed into this system. And as a result of that energy, the elements that make up this system they go through a shift in their structure. It is that structural difference that you see here. But ultimately, they're all the same thing. You are different from another person. You look different only because of a structural difference. The parts of your body are structurally different from each other as well as from each other. The first each other was the parts of the body. And the second each other I mentioned was from each other, individuals. This is the only difference there is. Now there is DNA, which is responsible for some of those differences. But ultimately, if you break it all down and back to DNA, DNA is also still ultimately elements, right? Your ribonucleotides are all ultimately elements. Nothing that is constructed in this world that does not come from the periodic table. It's all there. So therefore, when you ask the question, I feel that 2 things are separate. What is separate from what? That is a meaningless question. Because that separation is only something that you feel. It does not really exist in the 2 things. Therefore, that question cannot be answered. Does that make sense to you? Not entirely. I'm not convinced. I'll keep trying. See, let me explain this further by using this example. Let's take someone in the audience from this side. Sir, you feel that you are a separate person to this gentleman on the other side, don't you? Let's be honest. And you, sir, feel that you are a separate individual to that gentleman over there, right? Let's take for a moment who this gentleman is. That's you. Looks like you, right? Better? Okay. What is this? Oh, who is this? Which one is a better question to ask? What is this? Yeah? Who is this? Is only something that he senses. Really? The question we should be asking is, what is that? What is that? Mind and body. That's right. That is mind and body. Okay, this gentleman over here. What is that? Mind and body. So, both these things are mind and body. But it doesn't stop the two gentlemen from sensing that they are separate individuals. They both sense an identity. Don't they? Don't you? You sense identity, don't you? That's why you have and carry an identity card to prove that you are a separate individual to everyone else. Because you sense this feeling of, you sense this identity. Which part of this is that identity? What is let's start with the simple one, the body. What is the body made of? If we were to take this body to the lab and we decomposed it into its constituent elements, all you get are the elements of the periodic table. Right? You'll get some carbons, you'll get some hydrogens, you'll get some oxygens, you'll get some nitrogens. Right? What else you get? You'll get all sorts of these things, right? The periodic table. What about if we take this body and decompose it? What do we get? We get the same stuff, right? Now, let's say for instance, when we decompose this body, we got say 6 carbons. I'm sure we're going to get more than that. Okay, say 6 million. Or even that's still an understatement, but let's keep it simple. 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, 14 nitrogens, right? And we got oxygens, and we got 25 nitrogens. That is the entire body, composition of the body. We took this to the lab and we decomposed it. We get, say, 14 carbons, 23 hydrogens, 40 oxygens, and we get 6 nitrogens. Okay? Now, we have several containers, one for carbon, one for hydrogen, one for oxygen, one for nitrogen. We put all the carbons into this and this. Okay, what do we get? 20 carbons. Hydrogens, how many do we get? 35. 35? Yeah. Oxygens, how many do we get? 54. And nitrogens, how many do we get? 31. 31 nitrogens. Right? So we are still working on the body for the time being. We'll go to the mind in a moment. Now, I say, oh, did we decompose them? Let's put them back together again. You want to put this gentleman back together again? And I come to, yes. You want to put this gentleman back together again. So again, you know that this is only mind and body, right? To put this back in this exact form, this is what you need. This is the formula for this body, right? Can you not simply go and dip into this container and take whichever carbon that comes to your hand? Can't you? Of course you can. Can't you dip your hand into this container and take whichever hydrogen that comes to your hand? All you need are 12 of them, right? Does it matter which, when, where it came from? No. Whether it came from this or this, does it matter? No. So if you dipped your hand into these containers and you took 6 of this, 12 of this, 14 of this and 25 of this, now you've got enough to recompose this body. Meaning, they were all the same. Meaning, these two bodies were not separated entities. They were simply structurally different for a period of time. Do you get my point here? They were simply structurally different for a period of time. Beg your pardon, sir?
Blood donation is also the same.
Yeah. So the reason that we can do that is because it's all the same stuff. And if we wanted to put this gentleman back together again, same process, right? We don't need to be concerned about where those elements came from, because it's all the same stuff. Now the thing is this, you don't need to come here to learn that lesson. That's pretty obvious, right? Scientists will teach you that, and they will accept and agree with that. So, let's go to the mind now. This is where the tricky part comes. In the mind, you feel this sense of identity, that you are separate to others. When this sense of separation, this sense of identity comes in the mind, everything about you feels different to another person. And it doesn't stop at the mind, it reaches all throughout the body. And then this sense of belonging stretches even beyond the body. It reaches out to your family, your friends, your possessions, right? And all the way to your country. Nationalistic ideas, where do they come from? Ignorance and attachment, where else? This is my nation. See, the funny thing is, folks, right? This makes me laugh. Like most things. Right? See if you can tell me what you think this is. What do you think that is? Can you see it from the back? Yeah? What do you think that is? Oh, okay.
Oh, your drawing is really bad.
Thank you. Now what do you think it is?
A skull. How do you like drawing without
Close. Keep going. What do I think it is? It is? It is the earth, yes. Excuse me. It is the earth. What did I show you before? This is just the core of the earth without the water. I shall have you know that this is the earth, okay? And you shall bear it forever. This is the earth without the water. If you removed all the water from the earth, it would simply be a piece of rock. uneven piece of rock, right? Now tell me where the countries are. Show me the separated countries that people fight for. Madam? Yeah. So the water, even the, exactly, yeah. 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 See, the water gives the impression that these countries are separate from one another. Even the, what do you call them, the continents. Right? So Africa is a separate continent to Europe, is a separate continent to Asia. Australia, right, a large island, so they say, is a separate landmass from the rest of the world. But that's just the water that gives that impression, isn't it? If you remove all the water, now where are all the separate continents? Now where are all the separate countries? Now where are the islands?
More than islands and countries, like there are these provinces, districts,
Cities, towns, villages, right, Buddha? So when we say that, say Australia is a separate country to Sri Lanka, how separate is it really? It's simply an impression that we get because there's water that seems like a separate or a different substance between the two landmasses. But underneath, it's all the same stuff. This is an analogy to how we feel we are separate from one another. Ultimately, we are all the same substance. But we feel like we are different from one another simply because of an impression that we get. There's an impression that is generated somewhere. From somewhere we get this impression that we are separate from one another. But ultimately, we are all just the same stuff. So we talked about the body. Let's move into the mind.